thanks to the department for inviting us along to talk a little bit about what we're doing at the City of Kingston. We've got a whole range of community safety initiatives, and this is one in particular. I look after our community wellbeing team, and community safety sits within my team. Gillian is a colleague working mainly on community safety, and Manju is one of the residents from the Westall residents group. And today we're just going to give a little bit of context to the situation in Kingston. Gillian's going to talk a little bit about how the project came about and the progress and the evolution of it. And Manju is going to give some reflection as a resident and her participation in the group, and perhaps where we might go into the future. And it was interesting that Sue and Elizabeth referred to partners and sustainability and community involvement. And this was one of the key aspects of what we were trying to do here at Westall. But look, it's part of a broader Kingston initiative. So we have a graffiti-free Kingston, we call it. And there's a lot of resources goes into trying to deal with the graffiti problem in Kingston. Council spends ratepayers' money about $225,000 to $250,000 a year, goes into dealing with graffiti removal and all of that associated costs that are with that. And we have a whole range of departments within council, I'm sure you're familiar with it in your own areas, that are involved in dealing with graffiti. So it's not just our responsibility, it goes right across community buildings, our parks and gardens, our depot team, and so on. We have a whole range of partners that are involved in our Graffiti-Free Kingston initiative. The Department of Justice is a significant one, of course, because they provide funding for a lot of the initiatives that we do, not only through the anti-graffiti grants, but also through public safety infrastructure grants as well that help to improve community safety generally. We have residents, we have a whole range of community groups, scouts, young people, church groups, Victoria Police, of course, are very active in supporting the initiatives that we do. We've got a number of friends groups that we've established, as well as this one that we're working on at the moment. Metro trains and other owners of infrastructure in the public space that we work with. Westall area, as you can see up in the top right hand corner, it's a little small enclave in Clayton South, right beside Westall train station. This is a map of the City of Kingston, and the Clayton South area is has a very high diverse community. There's 67% of the population in the Clayton South area have been born in another country other than Australia. And Westall is a small area within that greater Clayton area. So it's right beside Westall Station there. And this is the location here. It's a small area. There's about, perhaps if you go to the next slide now, Elizabeth, we've got about 279 households, maybe 1,200, 1,300 residents in the area. There's a high student population. It's quite close to Monash University. A lot of the properties have been bought and are now being leased out to students. And so there's this transient population. Though there are quite a lot of residents who are there longer term, permanent residents. It's a diverse community, as I've said, high multiculturalism. And in this particular area, we have quite a range of people who high numbers who were born in India and China. So there's that diverse community. Gillian's going to talk a little bit about the group itself and how it came about, but I think we want to emphasise the whole notion of community involvement, working closely with the community and hoping that it'll be sustained into the future because community will have control over it and determine its future. And we are hoping that it'll not just be confined to graffiti removal, but to the broader crime prevention in the area and hopefully community pride and community capacity building. So Gillian's going to talk a little bit about that now.
Thanks, Dominic. So the Westall estate was developed about 4 years ago, so it's a relatively new estate. However, we found that quickly the grass was getting overgrown and litter was being dumped and the estate wasn't being sort of looked after. And in 2011, the traders from the local shopping strip, which is directly opposite the estate, contacted council about graffiti issues in the shopping strip, which resulted in a community clean-up activity that involved councils, traders and some of the residents. But as more residents moved into the estate, the residents had increased interest in the area and addressing some of the issues in the graffiti within the estate. So a core group of those residents took interest and started contacting council about those issues. So in November 2012, in response to that, we had another clean-up day, but this time in the estate, that was initiated by the local residents. So a number of partnerships were established for that clean-up activity, including council, the Strengthening Clayton and Clarinda project, which is a state government-funded community renewal project, working across the boundaries of Monash and Kingston for the Clayton area. The Westall Secondary College have been a fantastic partner. They've given us access to a meeting room on the school, but also a storage space for some clean-up sort of tools. Bosch, who is actually business nearby, and they originally offered some volunteer staff to participate in the clean-up activity. However, because we held it on a Saturday, because that's when the residents were available, the Bosch staff couldn't participate. However, they did donate some like gardening tools and other items. The local men's shed provided a barbecue lunch, and of course the local businesses and residents participated in the clean-up day. But the local residents were interested in building on the partnerships established for that clean-up day, and also keen not to see the local area deteriorate again. So that's when we looked to apply for the graffiti grants program. We submitted an application, and the application process of putting that application together was actually really useful in reconnecting with the local businesses. We went and visited each of the businesses in the shopping strip, and there are quite a few. And we tried to get them to commit to not only in principle support of starting up a residents group, but also just to commit to keeping their businesses clean and the local area clean. So it was also an opportunity for other residents groups that we have in Kingston to share their knowledge about establishing residents groups. So we have Friends of the Grange, which is a nearby reserve, Friends of Mentone Station and Gardens, and the Chelsea Bon Beach train station group. And of course our local Victoria Police Crime Prevention Officer provided support to the project, and we'll work with the Westall Residents Group in addressing their crime concerns. So as Dominic mentioned, we're just going to talk a little bit about the project principles. It was very much a community development approach. We were looking to support the community to establish their own goals and gain the skills and tools to achieve them. It was about fostering community ownership and pride in the local area, working with the community from the grassroots rather than a top-down model, and establishing those partnerships in the local community. We wanted to make sure that the project was sustainable beyond the project funding period. So I'll just talk about getting the group established. So we held a series of meetings with invitations sent out to the entire Westall estate in English and Chinese. As Dominic mentioned, there's a large Indian and Chinese population, and the feedback from the residents that we were talking to was that the Indian population had a working knowledge of English, so we didn't need to translate. So we had a positive response. However, it took a number of meetings to get a core group of residents happening because we had different residents available to attend different meetings, so it was hard to sort of get a consensus, if you like, on the decisions that were being made to make sure they're actually reflecting the views of the whole group. But we now have a core group of residents participating in the group. Then the residents obviously started to get a bit more organised, and they had a meeting with Art Council, and they've agreed to meet once a month, and they're currently discussing their terms of reference. So then we went on to organise a community cleanup activity. Unfortunately, we planned to hold it on the 1st of June, which was possibly the most rainy day of the year. So it had to be cancelled because you can't paint out graffiti and the ground was too wet for the gardening. But the Westall Residents Group are now managing a tool library, so the tools that were donated by Bosch that are being housed at the Westall Secondary College are just available as a local community resource, so the community can access them at any time. There's 2 graffiti removal bins in there, there's some graffiti removal kits, and also, those gardening tools, so that the community can ongoingly keep their local area clean. And that's currently being facilitated by Manju. They've also established a Facebook page, which you can visit. It was one of the learnings from the Chelsea Bond Beach train station group. They found it a really effective way to engage their local community in the group. And we were hoping, because there is a high student population in the area, that might be one medium to try and engage with those students. So some key learnings from the project, probably that the initial cleanup day was essential in establishing those partnerships, and also getting that community interest. Another learning was that 5 months is a fairly short time frame to try and get a residence group happening. So you probably have a bit more of a think about the time frames involved. And the other learning, of course, with the clean-up day that was washed out is just perhaps there are some other objectives that the group want to achieve, and perhaps they could have been undertaken instead, because they might have been able to be done indoors. So I'm now just going to pass to Manju. She's a member of the Westall Residents Group, and she's taken a lead role in the group, which is fantastic, and she'll talk about their plans for the future.